Welcome, Mental Health Monday family. So good to see you guys here. We apologize for our delay. We were having some technical issues. I'm tired of saying that, to be honest. And this time it was like we got a new system so we wouldn't have those problems. And then we're still learning the system. So there was a simple thing to do, and we figured it out at the last minute. We were about to not go live, but praise God, we are here live. And I see that we have just a couple of faithfuls who hung on. Hopefully, the others will check back, or some were tuning in late. I see it's creeping up just a bit. So we are thankful that you are here. We have an important topic. And of course, we are not going to get to all of it this evening because we are having an abbreviated program because we're starting late, but we will continue to do the program not next week, but the week after. So we will, since we produce and host our own program, we can cover as much as we want and take as long as we want. So however long it takes. This is a very important topic, but I want to say welcome to my co-host, Dr. Ricardo Whyte.
Thank you so much. Happy belated birthday and welcome back from Hawaii, it sounds like.
Thank you. Yes, that's our favorite little getaway spot that we can sneak away to sometimes just to get refreshed. You know how the Bible says you need to go rest a while, go take some time away. That was our time away, and it definitely was a good refreshing to me and my husband. So thank you for the birthday greeting too. It was nice to spend my birthday there as well. So, yes. Okay. Well, we have, of course, Clint, one of the faithful, hung on. Clint, you knew we were coming, Clint. We were coming. So it's good to see you here. Lynette Buffong. Okay. Good evening to you. Nice to see you here. Muse Black, you were the first one. And I don't know where you're watching from, Muse, but it's good to see you here. Please put in the chat where you're viewing from. Robert Green, good to see you.
I suspect Clint was probably first, but then jumped off.
Yeah, probably. He was like, all right, he probably kept checking to see. I'll keep checking if they get on. So
So
thank you.
guaranteed
Good to,
there are technical difficulties going through this, but just
yes,
on the content because it's really, really important.
it
And,
is very important content.
and
Very
over and
important
over,
content.
whenever you and Pastor Myers are presenting, he talks about this principle of repeat and enlarge.
That's right.
So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to
Gonna repeat it.
teaser.
Okay. Yes.
Next,
No. That's
next time we'll enlarge. I'm going to give you this overview. The reason
yes.
it's so important is it's because it's almost like alcohol's the silent killer. It's been around so long. We start thinking, we hear about the opioid crisis, but
Right.
we now are losing sight that, wait a second,
Or
alcohol is still doing some serious damage.
right. And you hear about fentanyl all the time and all these type of drugs. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And we're going to jump into that. Just welcome everyone who is here. I want to say hi to Ashley Owens. Thank you for the birthday greeting. And yeah, it's great to see all of you. And
Absolutely.
you know what? You guys can please share on your social media what you're watching, invite people to come and join you because this is a topic for everyone. This is a topic for everyone. Because as Dr. Whyte was saying, it's like the silent killer that nobody is talking about. And when we get into it, I'll give some of my perspective on why that is. But we want to take a deep dive into the addiction of alcohol and
Well,
also look at what it does to the person, obviously, and looking into all of that, but also what it does to relationships and to those that they love, how that affects them. And I'm sure many of you have been on some level affected by, either a close family member or through a friend who may have had an alcoholic parent or a loved one, and they were very impacted by that. So we're going to take a deep dive into that. So give us the numbers, Dr. Whyte. What
exactly.
is alcohol doing? How many lives does alcohol addiction take per year
So it's
on
easy
average?
to notice, but I remember when I was in training, the number was 80,000. And as if that's not enough. Um,
Right.
Currently, the statistic is 140,000 people dying annually in the US from alcohol-related causes. Just for context, imagine 380 people dying daily. Okay?
Wow.
That's about a death every 3.8 minutes. All right? 44% of those dying are dying from chronic conditions like liver disease, cancer, high blood pressure, but
Right.
56% are dying from acute issues like alcohol poisoning, car accidents, falls, homicides, and suicides. One of the really concerning things with Conte is there are people who can start a binging episode not suicidal, not suicidal, and in the midst of that drinking episode, actually commit suicide under the influence of alcohol. So it really is a silent killer because it's one thing that you were already feeling suicidal. It's another that you were at your psychic baseline. And now, because of intoxication, now that's really, really tragic. But 140,000 people dying annually. So of course,
That is tragic.
yeah. So
That
I
is tragic.
something else.
And I like what I don't like what Clint said, but I think I like it as a comment just to because I think a lot of us have dealt with that. But it says I grew up in a household where alcohol was such a normal band aid.
Wow.
And I like how you put that, Clint, because to give it the term a band aid. And that is what alcohol and really any other drug is. It is to just cover up those negative emotions. You don't want to feel it. So we try to numb ourselves. And so alcohol will do that. Try to numb yourself from feeling those negative emotions. But I just like the analogy that you used, calling it a band aid, because that is how it can start for some people and then it turns into an addiction.
And so that next question then would be then, hey, what's the difference between social drinking versus when it's an addiction? You do want to know that there was a 2023 study that said just one drink can raise the risk of death. So a massive 23 study published in the JAMA Network found no amount of alcohol is safe. Even moderate drinking is associated with increased all-cause mortality. Risk increase begins to appear just one drink per day for women and two for men. And the article is in JAMA 2023, Journal of the American Medical Association. So that's interesting when you start to see that even science is saying no, there's no safe there's no safe amount. Um,
Right.
Something to be aware of. And then, of course, alcohol impaired driving causes 1 in 3 traffic deaths. So over 10,000 deaths annually in the US are due to alcohol related crashes. So this is not something we talk a lot about. The other thing is you see so many people adding to their brand alcohol. You see, and I'm not going to call anybody out, but this is almost like a rite of passage. And you see them making a lot of money. By the way, since we're talking, how much do you think America spends on alcohol in a year?
That because I couldn't hear you that well. Did you say an average American or in America we spend on alcohol in a
You
year
could
as a
do either one.
whole?
You could do either one, but I was thinking just what's the total amount spent on alcohol in the United States in 1 year?
I'm just taking a shot in the dark. So, $1 billion? How much?
383 billion.
383 billion. Wow. I was so off.
No, and when you break, well, the billion was good because a lot of times people go even under that. Um, but when you break it down, that's almost like $600 for every man, woman, and I forget if it's child included. Let me see if I can get you the exact stat. But it's astronomical when you really think about it.
That is so much money. That is so much money. But that lets you know how big of an industry it is. I know we're not talking about addiction right here, but it's that's how big of an industry it is. And when something is that big, they don't want you, okay, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy show here, but they don't want you to stop. They want you to drink, right? Or they want you to like abuse this because it's making so much money for someone.
And I think sometimes people just don't know, but you, living man or audience, we want you to be aware. And we want you to recognize this for the risky thing that it is. So, so first, we just wanted to ground the conversation uh, so that you can understand, no, this really is a very important issue. This really is an important issue. And that's why we wanted to give you some of those statistics. Um, yeah. Anything else that you wanted to, any questions or any issues?
Yes, and just like you're asking me questions, but we want you guys to put your questions in the chat as well, so that we can talk about it. But just I'm still just blown away by that number. But when I think about addiction, I mean, what because alcohol is a substance, right? It can change your mind, or it's a substance, right? So what other substance besides, I guess, cigarettes, nicotine, right, that is promoted the way alcohol is? And I can even say that nicotine or cigarettes is not even promoted the way alcohol is. um, Maybe it used to be, but not in the last, what, 30 or 40 years. It hasn't been as promoted as alcohol. I mean, you have commercials that are promoting alcohol, and, it's like, it's when you turn 21, you can legally drink. It's okay now. It's
And
just something that it's not looked at as a negative in our society. It's not negative. Only if you're young and you're a teenager or whatever, then it's a negative. And then, of course, when people do abuse it, then it's a negative. But it has to get to that point before it's a negative for our
it,
society.
it's just not portrayed. You know, you have the image of the strong person, and they're attractive, and they're surrounded by, the opposite sex, and there's everything that you would kind of aspire to be, and it's quietly centered around that drink in your hand, and it just being the ultimate mark. So I just want to give you the specific statistic. In 2023, the average annual expenditure per consumer unit on alcohol beverage was $637, up from 583 in 2022. So I just want to give you that specific statistic. Um,
So, just wanting to take a deep dive, like, um, what happens, well, addiction period, but what happens in the brain to someone who gets addicted to alcohol? Because people are thinking like, well, I drank some, I wasn't addicted to it, but then some people do get addicted. So what happens in
so,
that to that person who gets addicted?
so one of the things that happens when you drink alcohol is initially um, you actually relax. Okay, because of course it'll go to the brain, and so it'll relax. And so this is what gets a lot of people started, because when you go to a social setting, you're kind of tense, you're kind of anxious, and nothing like a drink to kind of reduce that anxiety. But unfortunately, it doesn't stop there. It can continue until, of course, it can progress all
Right.
the way to intoxication and even a person getting comatose. I think the interesting thing is that with repeated use, alcohol goes to a place on the neuron, and what it'll do is it'll actually decrease the rate of firing of the neuron. Okay, and when the body gets habituated, when it gets accustomed to that, in the absence of alcohol, there is increased firing of that neuron. So, in other words, in the absence of alcohol, the anxiety kind of goes up.
It goes up.
Now, if the anxiety is going up, guess what it's going to encourage you to do?
Drink more.
You're going to drink more.
Drink
Exactly.
more. Drink
You're going to
more.
drink more. And so you can see the cycle. And so a lot of people say, well, I drink because it relaxes me. And they sometimes don't even, well, I guess they do recognize then that in the absence of alcohol, it can progress to where they are having tremors. They're having tremors. And they need the alcohol, or at least they use the alcohol to self-medicate the tremor. So we did say this was going to be repeat and enlarge. We wanted to show you this is a really fascinating discussion, and you want to be here when we continue this discussion. I guess 2 weeks from now. So we are going to have to stop it on 5:45 because of an issue that I had at the beginning.
Right.
Um, but but we wanted to ground you in understanding, even though we don't talk about alcohol addiction a lot, it really is kind of a silent killer. It has a profound impact, um, and it's something that it's wise to avoid. It's wise to avoid. According to the JAMA study, it's like, hey, we can't anymore say there is that one drink is a good idea. That is something the research is not. It's just not bearing out.
Right. Clint has a good question. He says, how can you help someone who abuses alcohol? What are some general methods of approach?
Okay, so uh, it's funny because the approach is going to vary depending on where they are in their process. So I'm trying to say, I'm sure you're familiar with the stages of change. And so this is in motivational interviewing. What it highlights is that people will be at a different point in their recovery journey, from not interested at all in change to very motivated and very interested in change, so that each phase of that requires a different approach. And so that's what complicates the discussion, Clint. So now, obviously, if a person is not motivated at all, that's where boundaries are important. And it's a situation where it's okay. I have to control what I can control. I can't control your behavior, but I've got to control my behavior. So
Right.
if you're intoxicated and I've noticed that you're unsafe to be around when you're intoxicated, then I'm going to withdraw from you during those. And you basically figure out what are the boundaries you're going to need to set in order to keep the relationship safe. Now you can see why professional consultation can be so important, because it's at that point that you can describe your experience with alcohol. You can describe the goals that you have, where this fits, so that you can get some very nuanced recommendations on what it is you need to do in order to optimize the relationship as best as possible. So that is a great question, and I hope that you see why it's important to get the necessary attention. This stuff is not just intuitive, and it's a mistake to think, okay, I can just use my best guess. A lot of our best thinking um, is not going to help the situation. There are knee-jerk things that we're inclined to do that'll make it worse, and things that we might not be inclined to do that might help the situation more than you would think.
What are some of those things that are knee jerk things that we might do that might make it worse? I'm sure many would like to know so
Yeah.
that they don't they don't do that.
So, for example, there's a condition called codependence, right? And so, for example, it's, you know what? I've got the power to keep you from drinking, all right?
Right.
And we are just going to do everything. Like, it's sort of like the chain you to the bed kind of mentality, and
Right.
I'm going to jail you and I'm going to keep tabs on you and all this kind of like, when in fact, you wouldn't believe how creative people are in that kind of atmosphere. Just a drink, you know, so that what it ends up doing is not working. Like anyone who's taken up that approach and has a moderate amount of self awareness will recognize that this is not a winning strategy. I really should get some professional consultation. But it's the knee jerk thing that you're inclined to do. Okay, I can do for this person what they actually need to do for themselves. I haven't seen that work very well. So that's the thing that I would say. I'm gonna have to leave it there for now. You know, sadly,
Okay, so you're having that other call that you must take.
yes, absolutely.
Got it. Got it. Um, I think okay, I will try to take some of your questions. If there's things that I cannot answer, because I'll be like, we're going to ask Dr. White that on our next session, and I will definitely, we're going to table that. But I will, go into some of the areas that I feel like I can cover. We just have about 15 more minutes together. And so we will do that, but we are going to come back in 2 weeks and have Dr. White, of course, back to be
And I,
able to go deeper
and I
into
just
this.
want to plug a stress mastery webinar that we will
Oh,
be
please.
hosting. So, is it stressful or what? you know.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
April is actually Stress Awareness Month. And so the Mastermind Institute will actually be hosting a webinar to teach you a powerful framework for helping you deal with stress. And the link is going to be in the chat so that you can register for that. We can know how many people we need to prepare for, circulate it as widely as possible. It, it's free. so,
Yes. You
so
guys want to take advantage of that, and it is in the chat. So please click on that link, and you can always go back after even this program ends. You can always go back and look at it in the chat so that you can see the link, so that you can be able to get that information and go. It's free, guys. So you want to go. It'll be a blessing.
thank
Okay, thank you for that, and we'll mention that. We're only going to be here for a few more minutes, and we'll mention it again. But thank you, Dr. White, and we will see you
Thank
in
you so
two
much.
weeks.
All right.
And see you in 2 weeks.
Take care. Bye bye.
So, yes, again, want to thank everyone for being here this evening. As you can tell, it is an abbreviated version of Mental Health Monday, and we don't get our Dr. White with us the entire time because he had to run off and take care of some important things. But I just wanted to stay on here just for a few minutes longer, give you guys an opportunity to ask more questions or even comments just about alcohol addiction. Um, you know, Dr. White is a psychiatrist and he specializes in addiction. So he covers that in an area that I don't specialize in. But what I do specialize in is in therapy for individuals, for couples, and for families. And so I just wanted to highlight that, so many times, I have families, individuals that come in and they have so many issues as adults that they're dealing with, and as I get deeper into their story, it come to find out that they were raised by an alcoholic, either their mother or their father, or maybe not even an alcoholic, but from a parent who abused drugs. And so that brings a host of issues into their life. It didn't just bring it in as adults; they always had it, even as children. But it carries through all the way through adulthood, and it really shows up in their relationships. A lot of times there are insecurities. They just don't feel safe. A lot of times they have attachment issues, so they have insecure attachment. So they don't know how to allow people to get close to them because there's always fear. When you're being raised by a parent that was an alcoholic, you just never know how they're going to come home. You never know if this is going to be a good night. You don't know if, dad or mom are going to be abusive to each other or abusive to you. So there's just a lot of just continual running anxiety in children. And then that doesn't stop, like I said, even into adulthood. And again, it shows up in their relationships when they're trying to have a normal, happy, healthy relationship with their significant other, and they find it very extremely difficult to do that. Or even in raising their children, they have picked up some very bad habits from their parent that is addicted to alcohol or other substances. Okay, we have a question. I feel like I have an addictive personality. Is that truly a thing? Um, yes, that is a thing, and usually that comes from other emotional issues, meaning it's a thing because you can learn that you can try to cover up other emotional issues by always being addicted to something or always being high on something, like I said at the beginning of the program, being addicted to a substance that numbs emotions, negative emotions that you don't want to feel or you don't want to think about. So because of that, and because you've been could have been going through that or dealing with that for so long, it's just easy to be like, well, I'll just drink or I'll just smoke it away or I'll just sniff it away or whatever the choice of addiction, a drug or a substance that you're wanting to use. So hopefully that makes sense. It's not like you were just born like you have an addictive personality. No, it's the trauma and things that have happened to you throughout your life that have pushed you or just really taking you in that direction into that space. So hopefully that makes sense. I see some other comments on here. It says the book Steps to Christ Recovery Edition. All right. Okay. Oh, with the 12-step program of Alcohol Anonymous. Okay. Yeah, that's really good too. So yeah, there's definitely amazing things that there's help, there's resources out there for addiction. And so that sounds like a very good resource. And there's others as well. But it is something that, when people go into rehab, they're dealing with a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about. I mean, to be able to really get down to the foundation of why you are finding being addicted, not just to alcohol, but other substances, you're wanting to find out the root of where this is coming from. Why was this an option for you? Did you feel like this was a better choice? What pain are you trying to cover up? What are you trying to numb yourself from? Those are the areas that I know in addiction recovery that they deal with. And when you're in individual addiction recovery, definitely want to go into those areas. Just looking for any other questions or comments. Let's see, it says, I'm aware many new SDAAs give up alcohol but have not dealt with the trauma of life. I agree. I agree with that, Gloria. That is so true. And so they may give up alcohol because socially, now that they've learned that, socially, because they're in a Christian space and setting, that's not okay. But if they don't deal with the trauma, they will turn to something else negative, and it may not be a substance, but it's still there. It's still not going to be something healthy. You always want to deal with the root issue, whatever that root issue is, that foundational issue, if you will, that needs to be dealt with for you to really be healed from what was causing you to be addicted to any substance in the first place. Let's see. How do you balance your commitment to your husband when addiction is involved in trying to raise your children, dealing with the chaos? So Ashley, that's definitely a hard one when there's, one parent who is addicted to a substance and there's young children, and you set a balance. So, if there's so many more to a situation like this. I mean, if the spouse is not willing to get help, I definitely would have my children and myself in therapy if that was my situation. Just because we are both coexisting and living with an alcoholic spouse and they're dealing with an alcoholic parent. If you're in danger or if the children are in danger and there's abuse that's going on, then you have to work with I would tell anyone to work with a mental health professional, so that you can make a decision if it's safe to leave or if that's the best decision to leave, if it's not safe for you or the children. But if it is a safe, relatively speaking, situation, I would definitely get myself and my children into therapy because they're being impacted by being exposed and being raised by an alcoholic parent. And so is the spouse. So that's what I would tell anyone. And I hope if I was in that situation, that's what somebody would tell me, because you're needing to get support or to get help in that situation. The children are definitely going to need it because it is not easy. What happens when children are raised with alcoholic parents, they always have to walk on eggshells because they never want to just like trigger the alcoholic parent. So they never feel like they can really say how they really feel. They will just learn how to just cover it up. And then they take that with them throughout their life and into their adulthood. And they don't speak up when they should, and they allow things that to happen when they shouldn't. But then they have a lot of anger. So there's just a lot of stuff in there for children who've been raised in homes where their parents or a parent or sometimes two parents were alcoholics. Definitely therapy is needed because they need to unpack all of that and deal with all of that they couldn't deal with when they were young. So we have just a few more moments and a little bit more time for questions. Again, we're going to take a deeper dive into this in 2 weeks when Dr. Whyte can be back with us. He had an urgent call that he had to take, but we're going to look more at the disease of alcoholism, what it does to the body, again, what it does to your relationships, and how you even get there. Sometimes how you even get there to become an alcoholic. So we're going to look into this deeper, and even how, like somebody asked, how you can help people if you have a loved one that is an alcoholic or a friend that is an alcoholic and you're wanting to help them. What is the best thing that you can do? So we're going to take a deeper look into that. But so if you have any more questions or comments, you can, like I said, there's just a few more minutes. And then we're going to close out for this evening. But before we do, I'd like to put up Dr. Whyte's program on stress that is free that he will be doing here. So I think we're going to put that in the chat. There it is, the Mastermind Institute. Click on that. I don't remember the dates. I want to say, I think the 13th, which is Sunday the 13th. I think it's starting and it's free. So you're not going to want to miss that. You're not going to want to miss that. Teaching us how to deal with stress, because we all have stress, right? We all have stress, and we need to learn how to deal with it in a healthy way. Okay, Ashley, at this point, it's more like the dry alcoholic, where the substance isn't used, but the walking on eggshells and triggers are still present. Yeah. So in that situation, it's like they've stopped using alcohol, but they haven't dealt with the foundational issues that caused them to start drinking in the first place. And so now it's just like they're bitter and angry, and like, because they're not numbing themselves with the alcohol anymore, and they haven't dealt with the foundational issue, they're still going to be just a very moody, unpredictable person. And so that's why you're still walking on eggshells. So really stop drinking is great, but this person still needs to deal with the core foundational issues that caused them to start drinking. because they need to heal and they need to deal with those things. And until then, they're going to be a pretty miserable, unhappy person until that happens. So yeah. All right. Yes, Gloria, Al Anon is a program for the family of alcoholics. It is a great program. Um, so yeah, you guys can look that up. That's another resource. It's a great program. Okay, well, want to thank you guys. Sorry that today was it was shorter than normal. We had some issues to get on. We got in late, but I still think some really positive things were shared, even when Dr. Whyte was on here. And hopefully, some of the things that I've been able to share towards the end were helpful as well. But we are going to. There's definitely a part two to this, a complete part two that will happen in 2 weeks. So want you to be back here with us. Bring a friend, bring someone that you know that has either has an alcoholic spouse or been raised by an alcoholic, or even dealt with some of these things themselves. And just let them know that this is the topic that we are talking about. So we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks and hope you have a good rest of the evening. See you soon.